Now, over the course of the last few episodes, we've been building a forum, and we've created forum threads and forum posts and all the interactions that you typically see with that. However, we now need to start adding things like email notifications. So in this episode, we're going to talk about adding email notifications anytime you submit a new comment, and then how to send this in the background as a background job, as well as how to preview these from inside of Rails itself without sending any actual emails. So let's dive in. So looking at the Rails guides for Action Mailer, we can find the deliver later method, and we can see that inside the Rails guides, it recommends using deliver later, but it also has this deliver now method. So there's two different ways that we can be sending emails now in Rails 4.2. And previously, we just had the .deliver on an email. So when you had an email, it would automatically send it immediately. Now we have two separate commands for this. We have deliver later and deliver now. And deliver now will send immediately, of course. And then deliver later will also send immediately unless you've configured Active Job to use something other than the inline background worker. So if you install Sidekick, you install Rescue or Sucker Punch, you'll be able to send jobs to Active Job that will send the emails later. So by default, it will send them immediately, and you just have your application ready to go when you want to roll out background workers. So that's really cool, and we're going to be using deliver later because there's no reason to use deliver now unless you absolutely need to send it immediately. So after we create a forum post inside the forum post controller, we want to actually send that email notification. So we can add a method like this immediately after save, and we can just call it send notifications. If we spell it right, it will be much better. So we'll make this send notifications method on the forum post so it can be the one that contains the logic for this. So we'll have this send notifications method, and it needs to get all the users, all the unique users in this thread, and then it also needs to send an email to each of those users. So we're going to have to do two things. The first thing will be to gather up all the users inside the thread that the forum post is in, and then we're going to have to send an email to all of those. So first things first, we can start building this one, and that one's pretty simple. So we have the forum thread, right, through our association. So we'll be able to do that, and then we'll be able to say, if we go to the forum thread, you can see that we have a belongs to, but we can also add a has many users through forum posts. So this will be a list of all the users who have ever chatted inside of the forum thread, and this will be the owner of the forum thread. So we don't really need to interact with this. We're just saving it just in case that we want to allow them later to be able to edit just the forum thread subject or something. So they're a little bit special because they're the person that created it. And we could give them a different name like belongs to owner and change the class name to user or something like that so that it separates the two out, but I'm going to leave that for now. So we'll add this association, and then that gives us the ability to say forumthread.users, and then we can take all the unique users in that list, but we can remove the current user from this forum post. So this association, whoever made the post, we want to remove from there, because if you create a comment in a thread, then you don't need to get an email notification because you submitted it. So we're going to remove you from that array. And then we'll save this to, we'll just say users variable is that. So this will allow us to take all the users in the thread, remove you, and then we can send the email out to you. So to create our mailer, to do that next step is there's the app mailers folder, and inside here we can create a new mailer. So I'm actually going to use the Rails generate mailer command, and we're going to have a notification mailer that we're going to generate. So Rails will generate this for you if you want. You can use this command. It also generates, the reason why we do this is it also generates this preview, which we're going to take a look at just a little bit later. So now going back to MacVim, we can open up the notification mailer here, and it's very simple. It's a class, inherits from Action Mailer Base, and then it has some defaults that you can set, such as the email it comes from. So we can change this to like notifications@gorails.com, but then we actually need to create the methods for the actual emails that are sent. So this one will be a forum post notification, and we're going to take the user that we want to send it to and the forum post. So what we'll do is we'll go through here and we'll say, to send this out, we're going to say users.each do user, and then we'll have a notification mailer .forum post notification, and we'll send in the user right here, and we'll send in self, which is the forum post that we're currently in, and then we can call deliver later on it. So then this will take advantage of the background workers if we have them, and if we don't have them, it will send it immediately. So then inside of here, we can cache this variables just so that we have them, and we'll have the forum post as a variable. We can also have the user so that we can use these in the views, and this works very similarly to how controllers do. You need to have the instance variables here, the orange ones, so that you can use them in your views. So then here we need to send the mail to the user, and we want to send it to their email address. And then we can say the default from doesn't need to, because that's set, we don't need to specify a from inside here, but we can set the subject as, Go Rails, new post in, and we'll put the forum post.forum thread.title in there, so that now when there's a notification, you will see that there was a new post inside of that thread. So now we can open up the app views notification mailer folder and see there's nothing in it, but we can create our templates in there now. And you might have noticed the similarities between controllers and mailers. You've got the folder name that matches the name of the class, and rather than inheriting from application controller, you inherit from Action Mailer Base. But each of these method names matches a template inside your views in the same folder. So they work very, very similarly, which is another benefit of Rails because you know exactly where these files are going to be. So if we edit the app views notification mailer and we call it forum post notification.html.erb, here we can add just any message, new post in at forum post.forum thread.title. So we'll have a little header in there, and then we can have our link to reply to this comment, and I'm going to put this in a paragraph tag, and we need the URL to send it to. So we have the forum thread URL, and we have to use URL here because this is inside of an email, so you'll be opening this in Gmail or mail on your iPhone or something like that. So we need the full URL, and you might be used to using path. Path will leave out the domain, which means that it can't find the actual site to send you to. So path is very bad to use in your mailers, but you want to use path pretty much everywhere else. So use URLs in your mailers because that's important. And then here we can pass in the @forum post.forum thread, And then we can even get fancy and do the same anchor as we had before with the with that last episode where we talked about the IDs in div 4. So now coming back to our forum thread, we can write a test post, create the forum post, and we'll see that it posted correctly. And if we come back to our Rails logs, we should be able to scroll up and see that here we go. The action mailer sent the email out, and we can highlight that here for you. The forum notification sent this email, and so it went from notifications at GoRails to me, and then it had the content as well. And you can see notes around this that are logs from active job when it got the job from the deliver later method that we sent. So this is pretty neat, and you can see that it's making all these comments, and it was processed from the inline thing, which is why it executed immediately. And all of this has happened through the global ID gem that allows us to do something like we did here, where we pass in the user and the forum post. So normally you would take and pass in the user ID, and this would look up the user here instead. But the global ID gem basically creates a way to serialize your objects, because when this happens later, you can't pass the object in immediately because that user might not exist, the forum post might not exist. You have to go look them up later. So there's a lot more to think about with the background workers, but Rails is providing these things to handle this for you. So you'll want to make sure that you're on the latest version of 4.2.0, which is beta 2, so that this all works. Because you might run into problems with global ID otherwise, but it adds a lot of magic in there so that you can pass in objects and not have to worry about, oh, like background workers actually work a little bit differently, and we want to save just ID numbers so we can look them up later. So if any data change, like imagine you sent an email or you created a new post, and as test user you created a new post, and it sends this email in the background. Imagine that Chris Oliver was changing his email address at the exact same time, and that finished first. Well, sending this email would be going to the wrong email address unless you sent over the ID where we could look up Chris Oliver's email and then find out that, oh, it just changed so we can send it to the right one, rather than sending one to the old address. So there's very small, subtle things you have to think about when you're using background workers, but Rails tries to help you quite a bit. Now, because Rails is so helpful, they've even gone as far as integrating email previews into Rails itself now. So you might have used a gem like Letter Opener before, so when you send these emails out, you don't have to actually check your email constantly and wait for it to go through the server. And that's a lot of time-consuming stuff, and it's definitely not testable either. So what Rails has introduced recently that it seems to be a very unknown feature is that in the test directory, that file that it created before is in the mailers previews directory. And this notification mailer preview allows us to build a method here that we can view in the Rails application. So this is only in development, but if we do forum post notification here, just like we have before in our mailer, so if we get the notification mailer up again, let's just grab this. We don't need to accept parameters this time because we're going to define those, and we're actually going to call this method. So we're going to have notification mailer dot forum post notification, and we're going to pass in the user and forum post ourselves. So let's assume that we have a user in the database and a forum post in the database, which you almost always do in development, but you'll want to make sure that you have them, and then you can call deliver now, and then this will actually send the email, and then Rails will call this method when you visit this URL. So let's grab just the mailers here and open that up in the browser, and you can see that actually this view is built into Rails. It enumerates all of the mailers that you've set up previews for. So every one of these previews files, it will go through it, look at the mailer preview class name, it'll show it here for you, and then all of the methods that you've created. So you can make them named accordingly. So I try and keep them matching. And then when you click on these, you can get, of course, the view of just that mailer so that you can drill down a little bit better. But when you click on the individual email, you'll be able to see that email that we saw in the terminal, but in your browser. So we don't actually have any CSS in here, but you can test the CSS out inside your browser and your Rails application to make sure that it's looking properly. So you don't have to send yourself an email or do any of that hard work that's very time consuming. You can put it here and then test this out with actual real users. You can go change user.first to anyone that you want. You can load specific users. You could generate random users. You can do whatever you want and preview those emails just right there in your browser. So this is probably one of the most underrated and most useful features when using emails in Rails, and I highly recommend that you practice using these email previews because it will save you a crazy amount of time. Now, we wouldn't actually be finished without integrating a background worker thing into our application. So I'm going to open up the gem file, and I'm going to add the gem of Sucker Punch in here. And Sucker Punch is one of the many background jobs gems out there. So there's Rescue, Sidekick, Sucker Punch. This one's very lightweight and actually doesn't require running a separate Rails or Ruby application to run those jobs. So it's very, very easy to set up, and this is all you have to do actually. And then we can go into our development.rb, and then rather, let's do our production.rb here, and we'll add a config.activejob queue adapter, and we'll say Sucker Punch. So the reason why we're going to do this in production only is because we actually want them to run in the background in production, but in development, we pretty much don't care. We don't need to be running them in the background. It might be good to run Sucker Punch in the background in development to make sure it's working. But aside from that, then you don't really need it in development because you can send those emails immediately and test them out because that's probably what you're wanting to do. In production, when you have hundreds of users on your forum sending emails and posting and interacting with different things, you'll want to tell ActiveJob to actually change the queue adapter from inline to something like Sucker Punch or Sidekick. And then that way the emails using deliver later like we have in our forum post model. Right here, when we call deliver later, that will actually send them in the background. And then this will execute really quickly as opposed to when we do deliver now or regular deliver. Those are very slow because it actually sends out a bunch of emails. So imagine your forum thread users list is 100 users. Well, if you have to send 100 users 100 emails, that is a ton of work. And when you click submit forum post, that is going to take a very long time, and you don't want your user to be waiting around and worrying like, did that post? And then if they worried when they clicked the button to create their post and it took 5 seconds, they might submit it again, and then you've got to send another set of 100 emails, and then people get duplicates and all that. So things get really bad with emails if you do them inline, which is why Rails has been spending a lot of time building the active job API and building things like deliver later, so that by default we have lots of functionality that's easy for us to use. So I hope this was helpful explaining a bunch of the different active job things, and we're going to come and build an active job notification thing just like deliver later, but we'll build our own from scratch in the next episode.